The stars looked different here. Lieutenant Commander Hana Kim pressed her face against the cold glass of her cockpit and watched the alien constellations spin past her damaged fighter. The Phoenix Dawn was dying around her, warning lights flashing, red across every panel, and the engine made sounds no engine should ever make. 3 hours ago, she had been part of a 5-ship reconnaissance squadron. Now she was alone, deep in enemy space with half her ship torn away by Vorthak plasma cannons. The other 4 pilots were gone. She had watched their ships explode one by one as the alien interceptors hunted them through the asteroid field near the Kepler system, but she had the data. That was what mattered now. Hana's hands shook as she worked the controls. Blood from a head wound had dried over her left eye, making everything look red and strange. Her flight suit was torn at the shoulder where shrapnel had cut through, and every breath hurt from what might be broken ribs. But she was alive, and she still had her mission. The data chip in her breast pocket contained 3 months of intelligence, work, fleet positions, weapon specifications, and most important of all, the location of the Vorthak Empire's main staging area. Earth Command needed this information. Without it, the next alien attack would catch humanity completely off guard. She had already tried to contact the fleet 16 times. Nothing came back except static and the distant chatter of Vorthak patrol ships searching for her. They knew she was out here somewhere. They knew she had escaped with something important. The Phoenix Dawn shuddered as another system failed. Life support was holding, barely, but the navigation computer was showing critical errors. Hana switched to manual control and felt the ship fight her every command. The steering was loose and unresponsive. The main engine was dead. Only the backup thrusters were keeping her moving, and they would not last much longer. A planet appeared on her sensor screen, Kepler 442b, according to the star charts. It was not supposed to be here in Vorthak space, but the war had changed many boundaries. The planet was large and rocky, with 2 small moons and an atmosphere that might be breathable. More importantly, it was close enough to reach before her ship fell apart completely. Hana began plotting a landing course when her proximity alarm screamed. 6 Vorthak fighters had found her. The enemy ships looked like giant metal insects with curved wings and too many weapon ports. They moved in perfect formation, closing the distance fast. Hana pushed her damaged engines as hard as she dared and dove toward the planet's atmosphere. Plasma bolts flashed past her cockpit, bright green death missing her by meters. The Phoenix Dawn's rear shields flared and died under the assault. Another hit like that and she would be space dust. She had one chance. Hana activated her emergency beacon and began transmitting everything. The data about Vorthak positions, fleet movements, weapon capabilities, and the coordinates of their staging area, all compressed into a tight beam signal aimed at the nearest human relay station. The transmission would take weeks to reach Earth. Command, but it would get there. Her mission would be complete. The Vorthak fighters realized what she was doing. They increased their attack, plasma cannons firing continuously. The Phoenix Dawn's hull began to buckle under the punishment. Sparks flew from the control panels, the cockpit filled with smoke. But the transmission was almost finished. 90% complete. 95. The planet's atmosphere rushed up to meet her as she dove deeper, using the heat and interference to mask her signal. The Vorthak ships followed, their sleek forms cutting through the upper air like knives. 100%. The data was away. Hana smiled grimly and cut power to everything except life support. The Phoenix Dawn became a falling brick, tumbling end over end toward the crystalline desert below. The Vorthak fighters, thinking she was dead, broke off their attack and began circling at a safe distance to watch the crash. The ground came up fast, too fast. Hana strapped herself in and tried to remember her crash landing training from the PO Academy. Keep the nose up, find the softest landing spot. Try to hit dirt instead of rocks. Pray to whatever gods might be listening. The Phoenix Dawn hit the desert floor at 200 kilometers per hour. The world went white with pain and noise. Metal screamed as it twisted and tore. The cockpit canopy cracked like an eggshell. Hana felt herself thrown against her restraints hard enough to drive the breath from her lungs. Then the ship hit something solid and flipped, rolling 3 times before sliding to a stop in a shower of sand and debris. Silence fell over the crash, tight like a blanket. Hana hung upside down in her pilot's seat, held by straps that had probably saved her life. Everything hurt. Her left arm felt wrong, maybe broken. Blood ran down her face from several cuts, but she was breathing. She was alive. The cockpit was a ruin. Most of the instruments were dead or showing damage warnings. The main computer was completely offline. But the emergency systems were still working, and she could see sky through the cracked canopy above her head. No, not sky. 2 alien suns burned purple and orange in a twilight atmosphere. This was definitely not Earth. Hana freed herself from the restraints and dropped to what used to be the cockpit ceiling. Every movement sent pain shooting through her ribs and shoulder. She found the emergency kit and pulled out medical supplies, water, and a small plasma pistol. The weapon had enough charge for maybe 20 shots. Outside, she could hear engines. The Vorthak fighters were landing. Hana checked the data chip one more time, still intact in her breast pocket, still secure. Even if they captured her, even if they killed her, the mission was complete. Earth Command would get the intelligence they needed. She pulled herself up to look through the broken canopy. 6 sleek alien fighters had landed in a circle around her crash site. Already she could see soldiers in insect-like armor climbing out and forming up. They carried weapons that hummed with energy and moved with the confidence of a superior force facing a defeated enemy. They thought this was over. They thought she was finished. Hana Kim had other ideas. She checked her pistol one more time, wiped blood from her eyes, and prepared to show these aliens what human defiance really meant. The alien soldiers moved like hunting spiders across the crystalline sand. Their chitinous armor gleamed under the twin suns as they approached the wreckage of the Phoenix Dawn, with weapons drawn. Each Vorthak warrior stood nearly 3 meters, tall, with 4 arms and eyes like black diamonds set in triangular heads. Commander Zethkul raised one clawed hand, and his squad stopped in perfect formation around the crash site. Smoke still rose from the twisted metal that had once been a human fighter. The ship was completely destroyed, split open like a broken egg. Nothing could have survived such an impact. But then something moved inside the wreckage. Hana Kim pushed herself up through the shattered cockpit canopy. Glass cut her hands and debris fell from her torn flight suit, but she kept moving. Her left arm hung at an odd angle, clearly broken. Blood ran down her face from multiple cuts. Her breathing was labored and painful, but her eyes burned with fury that made even the battle-hardened Vorthak soldiers take a step back. She climbed fully out of the wreckage and stood on unsteady legs. The plasma pistol in her good hand was pointed directly at Commander Zethkul. Around the circle, 20 alien warriors aimed their weapons at her, but she did not flinch. "So," she said, her voice steady despite the pain, "is this a rescue or a cleanup crew?" The Vorthak soldiers exchanged confused clicks and whistles. In all their years of conquest, they had never encountered a defeated enemy who spoke with such defiance. Most species they encountered either begged for mercy or cowered in terror. This small damaged human was doing neither. Commander Zethkul studied her with interest. He had fought humans before during the border conflicts. They were supposed to be weak, emotional creatures who broke easily under pressure, yet this one stood before his entire squad with a weapon drawn, as if she believed she could win. From the back of the formation, a human voice called out in perfect Korean, "Do not make this worse for yourself." Hana turned her head slightly and saw another human being escorted by 2 Vorthak guards. He was middle-aged with graying hair and wore the tattered remains of a human military uniform. Captain's insignia still showed on his collar, though the rest of his badges had been removed. "Captain Taman Park," she read from his name tag. "3rd Reconnaissance Division." Park nodded grimly. "You should put down the weapon. They will kill you if you resist further." "Will they?" Hana kept her pistol trained on the Vorthak commander. "And what happens if I surrender? Do they send me home with a pat on the head?" Park's expression darkened. "They interrogate prisoners for information. Then they decide whether you are useful alive." Commander Zethkul stepped forward, his weapon lowering slightly. When he spoke, His voice came through a translation device that turned his alien clicks into mechanical English. Human pilot, you have fought well, but your ship is destroyed. Your fleet is not coming. Surrender now, and your death will be quick. Hana laughed, a sound sharp as breaking glass. Death? Is that the best offer you have? The commander's head tilted in confusion. This was not how defeated enemies were supposed to behave. You flew alone against 6 fighters, he continued. You survived, a crash that should have killed you. Your species shows more resilience than our intelligence reports suggested. Your intelligence reports are wrong about a lot of things. Park moved closer, his guards allowing it. Lieutenant Commander, I have been their prisoner for 3 months. I have seen what happens to humans who resist. Please do not give them a reason to make an example of you. Hana studied Park's face and saw the defeat there. Whatever the Vorthak had done to him had broken something inside. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes avoiding direct contact with hers. This was a man who had given up hope. What did you tell them, Captain? Park's face flushed with shame. Tactical information, troop movements. Standard interrogation resistance only lasts so long when they have the right tools. I see. Hana's voice was cold as space. And now you help them capture other humans. I try to keep them alive. Sometimes cooperation is the only way to survive. Commander Zethkul watched this exchange with growing interest. The psychology of human prisoners was proving more complex than expected. This new captive showed no signs of the broken spirit that made Park so useful. You transmitted something before your crash, the commander said. Our sensors detected a data burst aimed toward human space. What information did you send? Hana smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Enough. Enough for what? Enough to ruin your day. The commander gestured to his soldiers, and they tightened their circle. Energy weapons hummed with increasing power. The message was clear. Answer or die. But Hana did not seem intimidated. Instead, she took a step forward, her pistol never wavering. Here is what is going to happen, she said. You are going to take me prisoner, because you need to know what I transmitted. You are going to interrogate me, and I am going to tell you absolutely nothing. And while you are wasting time trying to break me, that data is going to reach Earth Command. Park stared at her with a mixture of admiration and horror. You are insane. They will tear you apart piece by piece. Maybe. But every second they spend on me is a second they are not spending on planning their next attack. She looked directly at Commander Zethkul. Every day you waste trying to crack me is a day my people have to prepare their defenses. The commander's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You believe your suffering serves a purpose. I know it does. Then you are either very brave or very foolish. Hana's smile widened. With humans, there is not much difference. Commander, Zethkul made a decision. This human was too valuable to kill. Her defiance intrigued him, and the intelligence she might possess could be crucial to the coming invasion. But more than that, she presented a challenge he had never faced before. He gestured to his soldiers. Take her alive. Use stun weapons. If she resists. Hana raised her pistol higher. I am not going quietly. I did not expect you would. The plasma bolt from her weapon took out the nearest Vorthak soldier before the stun beams hit her. She collapsed to the crystalline sand, unconscious but still breathing. As the soldiers lifted her unconscious form, Captain Park approached Commander Zethkul. She is different from the others, Park said quietly. The commander nodded. Yes, this one will be interesting to break. But as they loaded Hana into their transport, neither the alien commander nor the broken human captain realized that some things, once truly forged, could never be broken at all. The Vorthak detention facility was carved into the side of a mountain, its black walls gleaming with alien metal and energy barriers. Hana woke up in a cell barely large enough to lie down in, her broken arm now in a crude medical brace. The aliens had healed her enough to keep her alive for questioning, nothing more. Through the energy barrier that served as her cell door, She could see a long corridor lined with similar cells. Most contained humans in various states of despair. Some sat staring at nothing, their minds broken by whatever interrogation methods the Vorthak used. Others paced like caged animals, still fighting against their imprisonment. "You are awake." Hana turned to see a young Korean woman in the cell across from hers. The woman's prison uniform was cleaner than the others, and she had managed to keep her long black hair neatly braided despite their circumstances. "I am Sora Lee," the woman said, "ship's engineer from the merchant vessel Sunrise Hope. We were captured 4 months ago during a supply run. Lieutenant Commander Hana Kim, how many of us are there?" Sora glanced down the corridor. 237 humans in this facility, maybe more in other sections. The Vorthak have been very busy collecting prisoners. "What do they want from us?" "Information, mostly. Fleet positions, defense plans, weapon capabilities. Some they use for manual labor in their mines, others—" Sora's voice trailed off. "Others what?" "Others never come back from interrogation." Hana examined her cell more carefully. The walls were smooth alien metal, but she could see tiny scratches and marks where previous prisoners had tried to escape. The energy barrier hummed with power, but there was a small control panel just outside her reach. "Have there been any successful escapes?" Sora shook her head. 3 attempts in the past month, all failed. The guards are too numerous, the facility too well protected. But you have been planning something. It was not a question. Hana had noticed how Sora positioned herself to block the view from the surveillance devices, how she kept her voice at just the right level to avoid the listening equipment. Sora smiled grimly. "What makes you think that?" "Because you are an engineer, and engineers solve problems. This place is just another problem to solve." Before Sora could answer, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. 4 Vorthak guards approached, their weapons charged and ready. Behind them walked Commander Zethkul and a figure that made Hana's blood run cold. Captain Taiman Park wore clean clothes now and walked freely beside the alien commander. No restraints, no guards pointing weapons at him. He had clearly made his choice about which side to serve. "Bring her," Commander Zethkul ordered. The guards deactivated Hana's cell barrier and dragged her out. She did not resist, saving her strength for when it would matter more. As they passed other cells, she counted faces and memorized the layout. Information was a weapon, and she intended to use every piece she could gather. The interrogation room was a sterile white chamber with a single chair in the center. Medical devices lined the walls, some clearly designed for healing, others, obviously, meant for causing pain. Commander Zethkul gestured for her to sit. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way," he said through his translator. "Tell us about the data you transmitted, and your suffering ends quickly." Hana sat down and looked directly into his black diamond eyes. "I already told you. I sent enough. Enough of what specifically? Troop positions, fleet movements, weapon specifications, all of it." Park stepped forward. "Commander Kim, they have drugs that will make you tell them everything anyway. Cooperation will at least preserve some dignity." Hana laughed. "Dignity from a traitor? That is rich." Park's face flushed, but Commander Zethkul raised a hand for silence. "Captain Park is trying to help you. His cooperation has kept many of your fellow prisoners alive. His cooperation has helped you plan attacks against human colonies." "Yes," the commander admitted without shame. "His information has been quite valuable. But you intrigue me more. Most humans break after the first session. You seem different." "I am. How?" Hana leaned back in the chair as much as her restraints allowed. "Because I know something you do not." "And what is that?" "I know that every minute you spend trying to break me is a minute you are not spending on your invasion plans. I know that my data is already halfway to Earth Command by now, and I know that no matter what you do to me, I will never tell you what you want to know." Commander Zethkul studied her for a long moment. Then he activated one of the medical devices. Pain shot through every nerve in Hana's body like liquid fire. She bit down hard enough to taste blood but made no sound. The pain stopped. "That was the lowest setting," the commander said. "We have 12 higher levels." Hana spat blood onto the white floor. Is that supposed to impress me? It is supposed to motivate you. Then you do not understand humans very well. The interrogation continued for 3 hours. Commander Zethkul used pain, drugs, and psychological pressure, but Hana revealed nothing useful. She answered questions with sarcasm, lies, or silence. When the drugs made her talkative, she recited poetry or sang old songs from her childhood. Finally frustrated, the commander ordered her returned to her cell. As the guards dragged her semi-conscious form back down the corridor, Sora watched, with new respect. Most prisoners came back from their first interrogation broken and weeping. Hana came back bloodied but still defiant. Impressive, Sora whispered once the guards were gone. Hana pulled herself up to the cell barrier. How long do I have before they try again? Usually 2 days. They like their subjects to heal enough to feel fresh pain. Good. That gives us a gay time. Time for what? Hana smiled through her swollen lips. Time to plan an escape that actually works. Sora stared at her. You cannot be serious. You just survived your first interrogation. Most people would be focused on getting through the next one. Most people are not carrying intelligence that could save billions of lives. Hana examined the corridor again, noting guard positions and patrol patterns. Besides, I made them a promise. What promise? I told them I would never break, but I never said anything about not escaping. Sora was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved closer to the barrier, positioning herself to block the surveillance devices. There are things you should know, she said quietly. About this facility, about the guards, about what I have been working on in the machine shop where they make us repair their equipment. Hana leaned forward. Tell me everything. As Sora began to explain her carefully hidden preparations, Hana felt something she had not felt since her capture. Hope. Not just for herself, but for all the humans trapped in this place. Commander Zethkul thought he was breaking her spirit, with pain and fear. Instead, he was giving her exactly what she needed: time to plan, allies to work with, and motivation to succeed. The Vorthak were about to learn that capturing a human was not the same thing as defeating one. The escape began at midnight when the facility's power grid switched to night cycle mode. Sora had spent months studying the patterns, mapping every electrical circuit and security protocol from her work in the repair shop. She had salvaged components piece by piece, hiding them in places the guards never thought to search. Hana pressed herself against her cell barrier as Sora activated the device she had built from spare parts. It was barely larger than her fist, but generated an electromagnetic pulse that disrupted the energy barriers for exactly 37 seconds. Now, Sora whispered. Hana slipped out of her cell and immediately began freeing other prisoners. The first was Jinho Seo, a former diplomat whose knowledge of alien cultures had kept him alive. Next came Dr. Youngmin Choi, a medic who had been treating injured prisoners with whatever supplies he could steal. Within minutes, 20 humans were free and moving silently through the corridors. But Hana knew they faced an impossible choice. We cannot leave the others, she told Sora as they crept toward the facility's main exit. There are over 200 prisoners in this place, Sora replied. We barely freed 20 before the device burned out. If we try to save everyone, we all get caught. Then we get caught. Sora grabbed Hana's arm. You are being stupid. 20 lives saved is better than 200 lives lost. No. Hana pulled free. 20 lives saved while abandoning 200 others is not salvation. It is just another kind of defeat. Jinho moved up beside them. She is right. If we run now, the Vorthak will increase security. No one else will ever get a chance to escape. Dr. Choi nodded agreement. These people have been counting on hope for months. We cannot take that away from them. Sora looked at the faces around her and realized she was outnumbered. These humans were choosing certain death over the possibility of freedom, and somehow, that choice felt right. Fine, she said, but we do this smart. We need weapons, transportation, and a way to disable the facility's communications so they cannot call for reinforcements. Hana smiled. Now you are thinking like a soldier. They split into 3 teams. Jin-Ho and Dr. Choi led a group to the armory, using Jin-Ho's knowledge of Vorthak security protocols to bypass the locks. Sora took a technical team to the communications center to sabotage the equipment. Hana led the largest group to systematically free every prisoner they could find. The plan worked perfectly for 23 minutes. Then a guard discovered empty cells on the 3rd level and raised the alarm. Emergency lights bathed the facility, in red as sirens wailed. Vorthak soldiers poured into the corridors, their weapons charged and their mandibles clicking with anger. Commander Zethkul's voice echoed through the speakers, ordering a complete lockdown. "All human prisoners return to your cells immediately," the translation device broadcast. "Any found outside designated areas will be executed." Hana crouched, behind a corner with 15 newly freed prisoners, most too weak to run far. Energy bolts flashed overhead as Vorthak soldiers swept the corridors in search teams. "We are trapped," whispered one prisoner, a young merchant marine named Kyujin. "Baek." "No," Hana said firmly. "We are committed." She activated the stolen communicator Sora had given her. "All teams, report status." Jin-Ho's voice crackled through the device. "Armory secured. We have weapons for 50 humans." "Communications center destroyed," Sora reported. "But they had backup transmitters we could not find." "Reinforcements are coming," Hana calculated quickly. They had maybe an hour before additional Vorthak forces arrived. That was enough time to free most of the remaining prisoners, but not enough to get them all to safety, unless they changed the game entirely. "New plan," she announced over the communicator. "We are not escaping. We are taking the facility." Silence filled the comm channel. Then Jin-Ho laughed. "You want to capture a Vorthak military installation with untrained prisoners and stolen weapons? Why not? They clearly did not expect us to try anything this bold. Their security was designed to keep prisoners in, not to repel an organized attack from inside." Sora's voice was incredulous. "Even if we could take the facility, we would just be trapped inside it when the reinforcements arrive. Not trapped. Fortified. With hostages." Dr. Choi understood first. "You want to take Vorthak prisoners?" Commander Zethkul and his officers would be valuable bargaining chips. The Vorthak value their military leaders too much to simply sacrifice them. It was insane. It was impossible. But as the idea spread through their stolen communicators, something remarkable happened. The human prisoners, who had been cowering and broken just hours before, began to stand straighter. Their voices grew stronger. For the first time in months, they had something to fight for. The battle for the detention facility lasted 6 hours. Hana led the main assault on the command center, using her military training to coordinate attacks down multiple corridors. Jin-Ho's team secured the vehicle bay, preventing any Vorthak reinforcements from entering easily. Sora worked frantically to turn the facility's own defenses against its defenders. The fighting was brutal. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had advantages the Vorthak had not expected. They knew the facility layout from months of imprisonment. They fought with the desperation of people who had nothing left to lose. And they were led by a woman who refused to accept defeat under any circumstances. When the sun rose over the alien landscape, 237 human prisoners stood free in the ruins of what had once been their prison. Commander Zethkul sat in restraints in his own command center, surrounded by his captured officers. Hana stood before him, bloodied but victorious. Her broken arm was in a makeshift sling, and she had acquired several new wounds during the fighting, but her eyes still burned with that same defiance he had seen at the crash site. "So," she said, echoing her words from that first encounter, "is this a rescue or a cleanup crew?" Commander Zethkul studied her with something that might have been respect. "You have won a single battle. The war continues." "Yes, it does. But now we have something we did not have before." "What is that?" Hana gestured to the humans working around them, treating wounded, securing equipment, and preparing defenses. They moved with purpose now, with hope. "Now we have each other." Sora approached with a salvaged alien communicator. "I have been monitoring Vorthak military channels. A relief force is 6 hours out. We need to decide what to do with our prizes." "Hana, looked at the captured aliens, then at her fellow humans. They had won an impossible victory, but it was only the beginning. The real fight was just starting. "Signal the Vorthak fleet," she told Sora. "Tell them we want to negotiate." Commander Zethkul's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "You think they will trade with terrorists who seize military facilities?" "No," Hana replied. "But they will negotiate with soldiers who just proved that humanity is far from defeated." As Sora began transmitting their demands, Hana allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. They were still outnumbered, still trapped behind enemy lines, still facing impossible odds. But they were no longer prisoners. They were fighters. And that made all the difference in the galaxy. 3 weeks after the facility takeover, Hana stood in what had once been Commander Zethkul's office, now converted into a human command center. Maps of the planet covered the walls, marked with red pins showing Vorthak installations they had destroyed and blue pins indicating human refugee camps hidden in the mountain caves. The Defiant, as they now called themselves, had grown from 200 escaped prisoners to nearly 300 fighters. Word of their rebellion had spread through the Vorthak prison network, inspiring breakouts at smaller facilities across the planet. Each successful escape brought new recruits, new skills, and new hope. Sora entered carrying a modified alien communication device. "We have a problem," she said. "Long-range sensors show a massive Vorthak fleet assembling in orbit. War leader Vexthul has arrived." Hana had heard that name before. Vexthul was the Vorthak Empire's most feared military commander, responsible for conquering 17 star systems. If he was here personally, it meant the High Command was taking their little rebellion very seriously. "How many ships?" Hana asked. 43 capital vessels, plus escorts. Enough firepower to turn this entire planet into molten rock. Jin-Ho looked up from the intelligence reports he had been studying. "They will not destroy the planet while their own officers are held captive here." "Will they not?" Sora shook her head. "Vexthul is known for sacrificing anything to achieve victory. Honor means more to the Vorthak than individual lives." "Doctor?" Choi spoke from the medical station where he was treating wounded fighters. "We always knew this was temporary. The question is whether we accomplished anything meaningful." Before anyone could answer, the communication array crackled to life. Sora had been monitoring both Vorthak military channels and the deep space frequencies where human ships might be listening. What came through now made everyone in the room freeze. "Unknown human forces on Kepler 442b. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We received your transmission. Help is coming." Hana grabbed the communicator. "Admiral Chen, this is Lieutenant Commander Hana Kim of the 3rd Reconnaissance Division. We have 300 human fighters and valuable intelligence about Vorthak operations." "Commander Kim, you were listed as killed in action 3 weeks ago. Your data transmission reached Earth Command 12 days ago. We are en route with a full battle fleet. What is your estimated arrival time?" There was a pause. When Admiral Chen spoke again, her voice was grim. 72 hours. "Can you hold out that long?" Hana looked around the room at her exhausted fighters. They had been running on determination and stolen supplies for weeks. The Vorthak knew the location of every cave and hideout by now. War leader. Vexthul had brought enough force to crush them completely. "We will find a way," she said. "Understood. Try to stay alive, Commander. Earth Command wants to hear your full report." The transmission ended, leaving the room in tense silence. 72 hours might as well have been 72 years. The Vorthak could overrun their positions in a matter of hours once they decided to attack. Sora was already working at her technical station. "There might be a way," she said slowly. "The planet's core is unstable. Seismic readings show massive pressure buildup in the magma chambers. If we could trigger a controlled chain reaction..." "You want to cause earthquakes?" Jin-Ho asked. "Bigger. Then earthquakes. I want to make this planet uninhabitable. Force both sides to evacuate to orbit." Hana understood immediately. "Level the playing field. Take away the Vorthak's advantages in ground combat." "Exactly. They have superior numbers and equipment, but in space, running evacuation operations, they would be vulnerable to hit and run, Attacks from our people. Dr. Choi looked horrified. You are talking about destroying an entire world. I am talking about making it temporarily unsafe for habitation. The seismic activity would last maybe 6 months, then stabilize. But during that time, no one could live here. It was a desperate plan, but then again, they were desperate people. Hana called together the senior staff of the Defiant for a final vote. The decision was unanimous. Sora began preparing the seismic charges using explosives salvaged from Vorthak mining equipment. Jinho organized evacuation plans for their own people. Dr. Choi prepared medical supplies for the wounded who would have to be moved during the chaos. Hana took on the most dangerous job of all. She had to get close enough to the main Vorthak base to plant the primary charges. The mission launched. At dawn, Hana led a strike team of 20 volunteers through the crystal canyons toward the massive fortress where war leader Vex Thul had established his headquarters. The Vorthak were expecting attacks on their outer positions, not a direct assault, on their command center. They almost succeeded completely. Hana's team infiltrated the base, planted the seismic charges at crucial support points, and began their withdrawal. But as they reached the perimeter, alarms began sounding. Somehow, the Vorthak had detected them. Energy weapons lit up the dawn sky as Vex Thul's soldiers poured out of the fortress. Hana's team was trapped in open ground with nowhere to hide. Go, she ordered her fighters. Get back to the caves and trigger the sequence. We are not leaving you, replied Sergeant Moon Jiwoo, one of the former prisoners who had become her most trusted lieutenant. That is an order, Sergeant. Moon hesitated, then saluted. It has been an honor serving with you, Commander. As her team retreated, Hana found herself alone, facing an entire Vorthak army. She activated her communicator one last time. Sora, this is Hana. Initiate the seismic sequence in 60 seconds. Hana, where are you? Where I need to be. Tell Earth Command that the intelligence in my original transmission was accurate. The Vorthak staging area coordinates are confirmed. Hana, take care of our people, Sora. Make sure they get home. Hana switched off the communicator and raised her weapon. War leader Vex Thul himself was approaching, surrounded by his elite guard. He was even larger than Commander Zethkul, with scars covering his chitinous armor and eyes that had seen the conquest of worlds. You are the human who started this rebellion, he said through his translator. I am. Your resistance has been impressive. Futile, but impressive. Has it been futile? Hana smiled. My data reached Earth Command. My people escaped your prisons. And in about 30 seconds your pretty fortress is going to shake itself apart. Vex Thul's head tilted. What have you done? The ground began to tremble. Far in the distance, explosions echoed through the mountains as Sora's charges detonated in sequence. The seismic chain reaction was beginning. I kept a promise, Hana said as the tremors grew stronger. I told your commander that I would never break. I also told him that every second he spent on me was a second my people had to prepare. The fortress walls began to crack. Emergency sirens wailed as Vorthak soldiers ran for their evacuation ships. Even war leader Vex Thul looked uncertain as his conquest began literally falling apart around him. You have doomed yourself along with us, he said. No, Hana replied as the ground split open beneath their feet. I have given my people a chance to win. The planet convulsed as magma chambers erupted across 3 continents. In space, both human and Vorthak fleets watched in amazement as Kepler 442b became uninhabitable in a matter of hours. But as evacuation ships launched from both sides, Admiral Chen's battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace right on schedule. The real fight was just beginning. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display with growing amazement as her fleet approached the chaos above Kepler 442b. The planet was convulsing with seismic activity, magma fountains shooting kilometers into space. Both human and Vorthak, evacuation ships were fleeing the surface in desperate haste. Ma'am, reported her tactical officer, we are receiving scattered transmissions from multiple human evacuation craft. It appears to be some kind of organized resistance movement. The robe Defiant, Admiral Chen murmured. She had read the initial intelligence reports about the escaped prisoners, but this was far beyond anything she had expected. On the main screen, she watched as small human craft harassed the much larger Vorthak evacuation fleet. They moved in, coordinated attack patterns, striking at vulnerable ships trying to lift wounded from the planet's surface. It was brilliant tactical thinking, using the chaos of the evacuation to level the playing field. "Admiral," came a transmission from one of the human craft. "This is Engineer Sora Lee, acting commander of the Defiant. We have intelligence packages ready for immediate transmission." "Commander Lee, what is your status? Where is Lieutenant Commander Kim?" There was a long pause. Commander Kim stayed behind to ensure the seismic charges detonated properly. She did not make it to the evacuation ships. Admiral Chen felt a chill. According to the reports, Hana Kim had been the heart and soul of this remarkable resistance movement. Her loss would be devastating to morale. "Understood, Commander Lee. Transmit your intelligence and prepare to coordinate with our fleet operations." As the data flowed into her ship's computers, Admiral Chen realized why Earth Command had mobilized such a massive force. The intelligence Kim had transmitted 3 weeks ago was just the beginning. The Defiant had gathered detailed information about Vorthak military structures, ship designs, tactical doctrines, and most importantly, the exact location of their primary staging area for the invasion of human space. "Ma'am," her tactical officer called out, "the Vorthak fleet is trying to form up for a coordinated withdrawal. War leader Vexthul is attempting to salvage his forces." "Not on my watch," Admiral Chen replied. "Signal the fleet. Attack formation. Gamma. We are going to finish what Lieutenant Commander Kim started." The battle that followed became known as the Miracle of Kepler 442b. Earth's fleet, armed with perfect intelligence about Vorthak ship capabilities, struck with precision that the aliens had never experienced from human forces. Every weakness was exploited, every tactical advantage pressed home. The Defiant's small craft continued their harassment attacks, but now they were coordinated with capital ship strikes. Sora Lee proved to be a brilliant tactical coordinator, using her months of studying Vorthak technology to guide Earth fleet targeting systems. But the real turning point came when a single evacuation pod launched from the planet's surface, just as the largest seismic eruption yet sent shockwaves through the system. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we are receiving a transmission from that pod. It is Lieutenant Commander Kim." Admiral Chen felt her heart skip. "Put her through." Hana's voice came through the speakers, weak but unmistakably defiant. "Admiral Chen, this is Commander Kim. I have War Leader Vexthul and 6 of his senior officers as prisoners. They were trapped in the fortress when the seismic charges detonated." "Commander Kim, how did you survive?" "Vorthak emergency. Shelters are built to withstand planetary bombardment. Turns out they also work pretty well against earthquakes." Sora's voice came through on a different channel. "Hana, we thought you were dead." "Not yet, though it was close for a while." Admiral Chen smiled. This was exactly the kind of impossible victory that would become legend. "Commander Kim, prepare to dock with the flagship. We need a full debriefing on everything the Defiant has learned." "Copy that, Admiral. But first I have a message for War Leader Vexthul's fleet." "Go ahead, Commander." Hana's transmission went out on all frequencies, both human and Vorthak. Her voice carried across the battlefield, reaching every ship in both fleets. "War Leader Vexthul, this is Lieutenant Commander Hana Kim of Earth Defense Forces. 3 weeks ago you asked me if your forces were a rescue crew or a cleanup crew. I have an answer for you now." The Vorthak fleet began to slow its withdrawal, listening despite themselves. "You came here to clean up what you thought was a minor problem. A few escaped prisoners. A small rebellion that would be crushed easily. Instead, you found something you did not expect." Admiral Chen watched as more human ships dropped out of hyperspace. The intelligence Kim had transmitted had allowed Earth Command to track down the entire Vorthak invasion fleet. This was not just one battle, it was the beginning of a complete strategic reversal. "You found defiance," Hana continued. "You found humans who refused to be broken, refused to surrender, refused to accept defeat no matter how impossible the odds. You found people who would rather destroy a planet than let you use it as a base to attack our homes. The tactical display showed the Vorthak fleet in full retreat now, their formation broken and their commander captured. So here is my answer, war leader. You were neither a rescue crew nor a cleanup crew. You were a lesson. A lesson about what happens when you underestimate humanity's capacity for resistance. Admiral Chen opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Lieutenant Commander Kim's intelligence has given us the location of the main Vorthak staging area. We are going to follow this fleet home and show them what a real rescue mission looks like. We are going to rescue every human prisoner in Vorthak space. Cheers erupted across the communication channels as the combined Earth fleet and Defiant forces began their pursuit. In her evacuation pod, Hana looked out at the stars through the small porthole. The planet below was still convulsing with seismic activity, but it would recover in time. The Vorthak fleet was fleeing in disorder, their invasion plans in ruins. But most importantly, 300 human prisoners who had been written off as lost were now free and heading home. Sora's voice came through the pod's communicator. Hana, what happens now? Hana smiled as she watched Earth's massive battle fleet form up around the surviving Defiant craft. Now we go home, Sora. We go home as heroes. And after that? After that, we make sure the galaxy knows what happens to anyone who tries to cage humanity. Admiral Chen's flagship moved alongside the evacuation pod as docking procedures began. Through the tactical displays, Hana could see the Vorthak fleet still retreating, their formation scattered and demoralized. War leader Vex Thul had come to Kepler 442b expecting to crush a minor rebellion. Instead, he had learned the same lesson that Hana Kim had been teaching since the moment she crawled out of her crashed fighter. Some things, once forged in the fires of defiance, could never be broken. As her pod docked with the flagship, Hana prepared to deliver her full intelligence report to Earth Command. The war was far from over, but humanity now had something they had lacked before, proof that they could not only resist the Vorthak Empire, but defeat it. And at the center of that proof stood a single truth that would echo across the galaxy. When humanity said never surrender, they meant it absolutely. The Defiant had become something greater than a resistance movement. They had become the symbol of human determination, the living embodiment of the species that refused to kneel. The stars themselves would remember their defiance.